The year 1984 and comic book creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird certainly deserve all the credit for bringing us the celebrated superhero foursome, otherwise known as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What was first envisioned as a single issue evolved into a full-fledged comic book series and ultimately a multimedia franchise, thanks to its enormous popularity. Now, there is simply no denying that the franchise is packed to the brim with a multitude of villains, each giving our ninjutsu-practicing turtles their generous share of troubles. But if you think it is Shredder who is the most dangerous among all, you are completely mistaken. Given that the lore of TMNT dates back hundreds of years, it's in the ancient past that the most fearsome of all the Turtles' foes made his presence known. Naturally, we're talking about a villain who may even be a bigger threat than Shredder. For those of you who are wondering who we're talking about, it's Takeshi Tatsuo, the man who founded the Foot Clan, and in today's video, we're going to explore all about him. But before we get into it, we do have one very small request. If you enjoy our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. It's a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Now let's begin. Origins of the original founder of the Foot Clan. For a better understanding of the character, we're going to take a look at Mateus Santoloco and Eric Burnham's miniseries Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Secret History of the Foot Clan. Mind you, a lot is happening in the series, but our focus will strictly be on Takeshi Tatsuo, who is a fierce samurai whose desire for power and dominance drove him to make some dark dealings in order to achieve his goals. Naturally, it goes without saying that Takeshi's first life was not only brief, but also quite bloody, ultimately setting off a chain of events that would in due course lead to some of the Turtles' greatest problems. It's only fair to admit that Takeshi was feared to such an extent that when he did finally die in his first life, he did so because his own men turned against him, and add to this that he was also at his weakest when he died. So one can pretty much understand the standing of the man who originally founded the Foot Clan, and that he would under no circumstances be done tormenting the world, even despite being killed. Well, let us take a closer peek into the comic storyline to get a grasp on who we are dealing with in today's video. The Yu Clan. A bulk of the comic narrative unfolds in the distant past, the Muromachi period of feudal Japan to be more precise. We're introduced to Tatsuo Takeshi, the samurai retainer of the daimyo Ashikaga Yu. In case you're not well versed with the Japanese terminology, daimyo stands for a traditional Japanese feudal lord, and back at that time, the daimyo title was only second in power to the shogun. Enjoying considerable support from the samurai class, Ashikaga was well on his way to becoming the shogun. However, the fact that Takeshi was also incredibly powerful and seemingly invincible in battles became a grave matter of concern for Ashikaga. There was no denying that it was Takeshi who brought the Yu clan numerous victories, and knowing Takeshi, and especially his ambition, he was not someone who would be okay to be under somebody for a long time. Takeshi's reputation as a zealous and fierce warrior intensified Ashikaga's paranoia, and he started to fear his subordinate. Not wanting to have that day arrive when Takeshi would turn on his master, Ashikaga decided to take matters into his own hands. Of course, Daimyo Ashikaga could not afford to fear Takeshi, and therefore he laid a trap to kill him. One man too many. Ashikaga sent Takeshi off on a mission into the mountains on the pretext of killing thieves, when in reality he sent a legion of warriors to take down one man. Had it been any ordinary man, he would have certainly died. But this is Takeshi Tatsuo we're talking about, and it goes without saying that his story had just started. Takeshi, despite being vastly outnumbered, demonstrated his fighting prowess, slaughtering countless attackers. He flew into battle like a man possessed, and showed the men sent to kill him just how deserved his reputation truly was. However, the sheer fatigue of fighting an entire army eventually took its toll, and one of the opponents managed to land a crippling blow on Takeshi, slicing off his right leg. Of course, this simply made Takeshi furious, and he ended up butchering the remaining army. The remains of the men sent against Takeshi were found after the snow melted, and as for Takeshi, it was assumed that he did not survive either, founding the Foot Clan. Fortunately for Takeshi, He was found after he had almost collapsed from a massive loss of blood by a mysterious cloaked figure who nursed him back to health. The shape-shifting Kitsune even had Takeshi's leg restored by giving him a green elixir, which would be later disclosed as the mutagen ooze. Of course, the recovery was slow, and initially Takeshi's leg was bloody and did not even have the skin on top. That being said, there was no need on Takeshi's part to be at his strongest to enact his vengeance. Now that he was free of any loyalties, he started building his own army. Coming back to Ashikaga, he eventually lost his influence and power. He was also plagued by rumors of Takeshi's survival, which started weighing all the more past a series of brutal attacks on his men. After some time, Ashikaga was also found murdered in his own bed, so don't act surprised when we say many blamed Takeshi for it. Safe to admit that the Yu clan, which was conclusively regarded as one of the greatest clans of the Muromachi period, was wiped from existence, and as for Takeshi, he left behind his bloodied footprint that inspired the Foot Clan's name. The first generation of the Foot Clan. There is no denying that Takeshi did form the Foot Clan out of the remnants of the Yu clan, the surviving members to be more precise. We get a glimpse into the early days of the new Foot Clan and Takeshi's increasing levels of cruelty. Takeshi's leadership has begun to disturb clan members, especially Oroku Maji and Masudo. We learn from the duo's conversation that many in the clan are afraid of Takeshi's unearthly power, and they find it pretty disturbing that he never seems to age. Rumors of Takeshi's unholy alliance and unnatural abilities have already started to circulate by then, and after the foot soldiers are made to burn a village to the ground and slaughter women and children, the mindless, brutal acts of their leader arouse further suspicions. During one of the village raids, Maji and Masudo saw a three-tailed fox and decided to follow. The duo was quite sure that the Kitsune had some role to play with Takeshi, and upon witnessing Takeshi address Kitsune, they realized that the powerful and ancient being was actually Takeshi's mystical ally. When it further dawned on them that Kitsune's alliance with Takeshi had only brought about darkness, they decided to free the clan from the very monster who founded it. Of course, it was not an easy thing to do, but Maji decided to follow the mythical being. He frequently observed Kitsune leaving with an empty satchel, only to return with a full satchel 2 days later during the full moon. Takeshi, during this time, usually locked himself away and would only emerge after Kitsune came back. With Maji filling in the other foot soldiers with what he saw, he started planning a surprise attack to overthrow their brutal leader. Determined not to be too hasty, Maji also made up his mind to delve deeper into the source of his leader's power by spying on Takeshi and Kitsune the following month during the full moon. To Maji's utter shock, he found Kitsune feeding a glowing green elixir to a seemingly elderly and bedridden Takeshi, and right after Takeshi's consumption of the ooze, he was miraculously transformed back to his youthful self. The following full moon, the rebellious foot soldiers led by Maji and Masudo made their move and attacked Tatsuo right before he could take the elixir. While Masudo and the other foot soldiers had Kitsune cornered, Maji delivered the killing blow to Takeshi, thereby earning Kitsune's wrath and curse. What Maji was completely oblivious to was that Kitsune wanted Takeshi to become the vessel for the return of her father, the dragon, and therefore she cursed Maji before escaping, stating that his downfall would come from his own house. Tatsuo reincarnated as Maji's son Oroku Saki. Kitsune's curse upon Maji took its time, and although Oroku Saki was guided by his father, who tried his best to curb his son's dark instincts, his fate was already decided. There was no stopping Saki from coming in direct contact with Kitsune, from whom he discovered his true legacy as the founder of the Foot Clan. To sum things up, Saki killed Maji and became the new leader of the Foot Clan, eventually turning it into a badass group of hardened assassins. Is Takeshi Tatsuo stronger than the Shredder? Besides the fact that Takeshi has died and been resurrected time and again shows that he is always going to be a bigger threat. After all, we're looking at a character who is pure evil and one who only desires power and control. His fighting prowess is impeccable. Dare we forget that he survived an entire legion of warriors and just lost a leg in the process, despite which he slaughtered them all. Takeshi was also well aware of the fact that having Kitsune by his side as an ally would only strengthen his position and help him dodge death by having his life extended. Next, it is actually quite exciting that Takeshi managed to defeat even his reincarnation, Orokusaki. Mind you, both are essentially the same person, but one can't deny the fact that they have completely different life experiences, which in turn makes their afterlife experiences different too. Please keep in mind that when it comes to Takeshi, he only values power, and therefore he is more than ready to serve the dragon so as to obtain it. Saki, on the other hand, loved his independence and craved power for himself and for his own use. Marvelous verdict. There is no denying that Takeshi Tatsuo is genuinely one of the most dangerous Foot Clan members, and it's not because of his association with a mythical being or his extraordinary fighting skills. If you ask us what makes him so dangerous, we think it's because of his ambition. Anyway, with that, we finally come to the end of today's video. Do let us know in the comments down below what your thoughts about the character are. Also, stay tuned with us as we promise to come back with more exciting content. Till then, goodbye and have a nice one.